Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Theravada Buddhism Series, Dhamma Talk 106. Pleasant feelings, Suka Vedana. Vedana in English is feeling. It is the mental experience of a thing or an object. Buddha preached a discourse on many feelings of experience on many things. Many feelings of experience on many things. At Jada Grove near Savatthi, the story of the sutta was based on an argument between carpenter Pincha Kanga and Venerable Mahaudeyi. One day, the carpenter approached the bhikkhu and asked, how many types of feelings the Buddha spoke of? The answer was 3. Pleasant, unpleasant, or neither pleasant nor unpleasant feeling, which is neutral. But the way it is written is pleasant, unpleasant, and neither pleasant nor unpleasant, which we quite loosely spoke of as neutral feeling. The carpenter disagreed and said it was 2, pleasant and unpleasant feelings. And the third, the neutral feeling belong to subtle and refined pleasure. They did not give in and stood their ground. Venerable Ananda overheard the argument and went to the Buddha and related the story. The Buddha replied that he had described or breached 2, 3, 5, 6, 36, and 108 kinds of feelings. And whenever he taught different numbers of feelings, it is relative to the condition and situation and approaches to the subject matter. if people disagree, what is soundly said by others would argue, quarrel, disrupt, and hurt one another by the spear of the tongue. That's what Buddha said. If people present it soundly, but it is different from one to the other, both have a very sound base, but still would quarrel, I'm right, you're wrong. All that it will bring is disunity. If they agree and approve of one another, which means, yeah, there's a disagreement, but both sides are sound, and then, okay, you may take what you believe and I'll take what I believe, but both sides we have a sound base. It will bring harmony and rejoice with love and kindness, with loving kindness. Heated contention and confrontation only create a loss of friendliness and unity. Those are Buddha's words, loosely translated into English. Buddha said, evident turmoil, distress of change, and constant disappearance of the mind and matter are suffering associated with unpleasant feelings and pain. It's regard to the unpleasant feeling. Regarding pleasant feelings, most believe that the pleasure of experiencing desirable and pleasing senses, which arouse lust and bind the mind, is supreme. Some people believe that those pleasures or pleasant feeling that you get from getting what you want, getting what you wish, those kind of pleasure are the supreme, the best. Some people believe that way. These sense arises from seeing form through the eyes, hearing sound through the ears, smelling odor through the nose, tasting flavor through the tongue, and touching sensation through the body. So, in other words, all these pleasant feelings through the five senses are pleasurable. And some people claim this is the best, the supreme. Buddha disagreed with that notion. Then Buddha proceeded to explain different levels of pleasures in ascending order. the pleasure of the first form jhana, okay, rupa jhana, the first form jhana, is superior to that of sense pleasure. And that pleasure consists of applied thoughts, sustained thought, joy, happiness, and pointed concentration. 5 jhanic factors. That is the first jhana, first form jhana. And that is devoid of unwholesome states, unwholesome mental states, and born out of seclusion from sense pleasure. This sense pleasure tires one after repeated experience. Let's say you have a favorite dish. If you keep eating the same dish 30 days in a row, you'll get tired of it. But this first jhanic pleasure is still associated with some mental movements. It is great, it is good, but still have some mental movements. The next higher pleasure is the second form jhana, okay, where only joy, happiness, and concentration remains. In the second jhana, applied thoughts and sustained thoughts are gone, which creates that mental movements. But still, in the second jhana, joy can move the heart and can make the tears flow. That is still some sort of a feeling of a very fine pleasure, joy, piti, can move the heart, and sometimes even tears comes out. So the next step is the third form jhana. It dwells in happiness and pointed concentration. One lives in the seclusion of sense pleasure and unwholesome mental activities. And you go to that jhana, it's only happiness, Suka, pointed concentration, ekaggata. Sukha and ekaggata, only 2. And these can only be born from seclusion of the sense pleasure and all unwholesome mental activities. Now, the fourth form jhana, one abandons happiness and suffering and dwells with equanimity and stillness without breath. It is the highest pleasure in the form jhana. So basically, equanimity replaces the happiness, Sukha. Upekha Vedana replaces the happiness, And one-pointedness is so strong, it's simply a stillness. No movement, nothing. That is the highest kind of pleasure one can obtain in the form jhana. So these are step by step. One is higher than the other. First jhana pleasure is higher than the sense pleasure. Second higher than the first. Third higher than the second. And the fourth is the highest among the form jhana. Then one who abandoned the perception of the physical object is left in its place with a blank space. What it is whenever the form jhana, the object is there's an object which is a thing or an object, something to look at. And then suddenly the next type of meditation is you abandon that object. Let's say you are observing a clay disc up to the point of fourth jhana. And then after that, you abandon that image of the clay disc from your attention. And when you abandon that image of the clay disc, in its place there's only a blank space. And blank space is a concept with no becoming, disappearing or knowing. Because there's nothing, just space, blank. So there's no becoming, and there's no disappearing, and also no knowing. Just in a space, there's no object to know. The pleasure of formless jhana in the infinite space is superior to that of form jhanas. This is called the formless jhana of infinite space. And once you become skillful with it, the next level is, or the next higher pleasure is the formless jhana of infinite consciousness. So, after mastering the infinite space, one abandons it, that infinite space, and observe the consciousness that knows the infinite space, which has no materiality, formless. So one doesn't observe on the infinite space anymore, but observe on the consciousness that knows the infinite space. So this formless jhana is known as formless jhana of infinite consciousness. That is the second formless jhana. And the third formless jhana is on nothingness. Nothingness, a void, not a space, it is nothingness. In Pali, it's called Nati Bhava Panuti. So what it is before you are observing the infinite consciousness, Now you observe the absence of that infinite consciousness. So there's no materiality, and also now there is no infinite consciousness. That's that formless jhana. That pleasure is superior to the formless jhana of infinite consciousness. And the more pleasurable and refined is the fourth formless jhana, where one dwells in neither perception nor non-perception. That pleasure is the highest pleasure one can experience in the formless jhana. And all formless jhanas are superior to the pleasure of the form jhanas. These are the 8 mundane attainment. Mundane means in Pali is lokiya. Attainment is samapatti. Lokiya samapatti. When people enter into this state, it is said they are entering the mundane attainments. They are enjoying this pleasure according to their level. Then the Buddha said, after explaining all these mundane attainments, pleasures of mundane attainment, Buddha said, the highest pleasure of all the attainments of the cessation of mind, where all perceptions and feelings ceased. Okay? So he said there's the highest pleasure, there's one more pleasure. That pleasure is attainment of cessation. What does it seek? Cessation of the mind, where all perceptions and feelings ceased. Called Nirodha Samapatti in Pali. In other words, total cessation of mind and matter in a simple way. But it is said, attainment of the cessation of mind, because without the mind, there's no feelings, there's no perception. That is called Nirodha Samapatti. There are 2 types where material remains and without material remains. You reach this stage, cessation of mind, but material remains mean one is still alive. You have the body. You are still carrying this burden of the body. But when the mind ceased, at that stage you are not aware of the existence of the body. In other words, the feeling of the bodies, the perceptions related to the materiality all cease. Another one is where no more materiality, no remains of materiality, which means the person who have attained that stage passed away. When it passed away, no more body, no more mind. 2 types. Some thinkers might ask how there can be pleasure if the perception and the feeling have ceased. Okay, how can there be a pleasure? That could be a question put forward by some thinkers. The Buddha explained that way because he was delivering feelings, pleasurable feelings, in terms of Vedana or feelings, pleasurable. In that context, Buddha put it, this cessation of mind and matter as the highest form of pleasure. One can look at it this way. Whenever there is no suffering, there's a pleasure. Okay. We know suffering, dukkha, many types of dukkha. Whenever there is no suffering, no dukkha, what is it? You feel peace, you feel happiness. So, elimination of suffering can be called pleasure. When there is no distraction or disturbance, there is pleasure. You don't have to have an exciting object to be pleasurable. In your life, there's no distraction, no disturbance. You are in peace, and that peace can be called pleasure. This is the pleasure without feeling, Vedana. And it is called supreme peace, Santi Suka, or supreme pleasure, or supreme peace, Santi Suka. This Santi Suka is without feelings, Vedana. Arahants will stay in the attainment of cessation for 7 days if they have nothing productive to do for others. So, Arahants are always active and doing good things, beneficial things for others in terms of Dharma. And if the condition doesn't give them to do, if there's nobody approaching them, asking them to do, in those moments they enter into that Nirodha Samapatti. Okay? Into this attainment of cessation. And that's where they stay. And that is, Buddha said, in terms of pleasure, the highest form of pleasure. So these are different kind of pleasant feelings. From the lowest, what we consider the best, the 5 sense pleasure, to the cessation of mind and matter. So keeping that in mind, let us strive our best, practice mindfulness, insight meditation, so that we may be able to experience cessation of mind and matter, or cessation of mind as soon as possible. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Thank you very much.